Spring is finally here, so it is time to tie on a spinnerbait, hit the shallow banks, and watch the water explode, right? Wrong. Absolutely, completely wrong. If you are doing this right now, you are probably getting skunked. Today, we are going to talk about why the most common advice for spring fishing is dead wrong for the first 2 weeks of March. I guarantee that 90% of the guys on the water right now are making this exact mistake. They are fishing memories instead of reality. By the end of this video, you will learn the unexpected truth about what the fish are actually doing right now, and why doing the exact opposite of what your grandpa taught you is the only way to catch them. Why do you think so many guys leave the boat ramp angry in early March? Let me know in the comments if you have ever been frustrated by the early spring bite, because we are about to fix that right now. Let us set the stage. This topic is incredibly important because early spring is the most misunderstood time of the entire year for fishing. We all get cabin fever. We spend all winter watching fishing videos, organizing our tackle boxes, and dreaming of aggressive top water strikes. When March finally rolls around, we rush out to the lake with our heads full of classic spring fishing advice. We have been taught for generations that spring means warm water, aggressive fish, and shallow feeding frenzies. People do the exact same thing year after year. They pull up to a cove, cast right at the muddy bank, and retrieve their lure as fast as they can. But they forget one crucial detail. The calendar on your wall does not dictate the temperature of the water. During those first couple of weeks of March, the water is still holding on to the dead chill of winter. The advice we all grew up with is meant for April or May, not the freezing reality of early March. You wake up early, pour your coffee, and look at the calendar. It says March. Spring is finally here. You load up your gear and head down to the local lake. Your head is full of all the classic spring fishing advice you have heard since you were a kid. Tie on something flashy, hit the shallow water, and get ready for a smash. But then you get out there. You cast for 1 hour, then 2 hours. Your hands are freezing, your bait is untouched, and you wonder what is going wrong. This is the ultimate early March trap. We trust the calendar more than we trust the actual conditions. That piece of paper says spring, but the lake is still locked in winter mode. The water temperature is probably hovering around 40 degrees. Those fish do not own a calendar. They only know how cold their environment is. And right now, their environment is telling them to stay low, stay slow, and conserve energy. But you are out there fishing like it is the middle of May. You are ripping baits through the water, hoping for an aggressive strike that simply is not going to happen. The disconnect between what we expect and what the fish are actually doing is exactly why so many guys go home empty-handed during these first 14 days of the month. We have to stop fishing the date and start fishing the water. Let us talk about the biological reality of the fish right now. Fish are cold-blooded creatures. Their metabolism is entirely dictated by the temperature of the water around them. In the middle of summer, their engines are running hot. They need to eat constantly, and they have the energy to chase down a fast-moving meal. But in the first 2 weeks of March, their engines are barely idling. Imagine waking up in a freezing cold room without a blanket. You're not going to jump out of bed and run a marathon. You're going to move as little as possible. That is exactly what the fish are doing. They are sluggish, they are lethargic, and they are not looking to expend any unnecessary energy. When you throw a fast-moving crankbait or a loud spinnerbait past them right now, they might look at it, but they are not going to chase it. It costs them too much energy for too little reward. The old advice says, spring fish are aggressive and hungry. The truth is, early March fish are stiff, slow, and looking for an easy, completely effortless meal. If your lure requires them to swim more than 2 feet to catch it, you are eliminating 95% of your potential bites. You have to understand their physical limitations in cold water. One of the biggest myths in all of fishing is the shallow water trap. Every magazine and old fishing tale tells you to head straight to the back of the shallow coves as soon as spring arrives. The theory is that the shallow water warms up faster, so the fish must be there. Picture this. You pull up to a beautiful shallow flat. The water is maybe 2 feet deep. You cast your heart out, working every single inch of that bank. But there is absolutely nothing there. Here is the problem with that grandfatherly advice. Yes, the shallow water warms up faster when the sun hits it. But it also cools down incredibly fast overnight. In early March, the nights are still freezing. That means the shallow water temperature is fluctuating wildly every single day. Fish hate rapid changes in temperature. It stresses them out. Instead of constantly moving in and out of the shallows every 12 hours, the big fish stay out in the deeper, more stable water. They are staging. They are waiting for the overall water temperature to stabilize before they make that final push to the banks. Hitting the shallows right now is a massive waste of your time. You are fishing exactly where the fish are not. Now let us talk about the lures you are throwing. The typical spring tackle box is full of moving baits, chatterbaits, spinnerbaits, square-bill crankbaits, and swim baits. These are fantastic tools, but they are the wrong tools for the first half of March. When you cast a moving bait, you are forcing the fish to make a split-second decision to strike. In warm water, this works perfectly. In cold water, their brain simply does not process the attack fast enough. Think about the guy you always see at the boat ramp. He is practically burning a spinnerbait through the water, complaining that the lake is dead today. The lake is not dead. His presentation is just completely unnatural for the current conditions. A bait fish in 45-degree water does not swim at 100 miles an hour. It barely moves at all. It shivers, it twitches, and it glides slowly. If you want to catch fish right now, you have to match the mood of the forage. That means putting away the high-speed gear and picking up something that you can fish incredibly slowly. The urge to cover a lot of water quickly is strong after a long winter, but you have to fight that urge. Speed is your absolute worst enemy right now. I want you to picture a typical early March morning on the water. You get to the lake before dawn. There is frost on the boat dock. Your breath makes little white clouds in the air. The water is perfectly still, looking almost like dark glass. You drop the trolling motor and start casting. You are doing what everyone says you should do. You are hitting the visible cover along the shore. You fish a laydown tree, a dock, and a rock pile. An hour goes by in total silence. Then another hour. The sun comes up, but it does not feel warm yet. You see another boat pass by. The guy waves, shrugs his shoulders, and shakes his head. Nobody is catching anything. This shared frustration is entirely based on a shared misconception. Everyone is fishing the visual cover on the shoreline because that is what spring fishing is supposed to look like. But in early March, the most important cover is completely invisible to the naked eye. It is under the boat. It is the subtle drop-offs, the deep brush piles, and the bottom transitions located 10 to 20 feet down. You are casting at the scenery while the fish are huddled up in the basement. You have to stop looking at the banks and start looking at your electronics or feeling the bottom. Understanding the transition zones is the true secret to the first 2 weeks of March. We know the fish are not in their deep wintering holes anymore, but we also know they are not up in the shallow spawning flats yet. So where are they? They are in the waiting rooms. These are the secondary points, the deep creek channel swings, and the first major drop-offs leading out from the shallow coves. These fish are making their journey from deep to shallow, and they do it in stages. Imagine walking up a giant flight of stairs. You do not jump from the bottom step straight to the top. You take it one step at a time, and maybe you stop on a landing to catch your breath. Those underwater ledges are the landings. A fish might move from 30 feet of water up to 15 feet and just sit there for a week waiting for the weather to warm up. If you are casting into 3 feet of water, Your bait is swimming right over their heads, 10 feet above them. You have to back your boat off the bank. Find those structural stair steps on the bottom. Drag a bait right through those waiting rooms. That is where the entire population of hungry fish is currently stacked up. There is a very dangerous illusion that happens on sunny afternoons in early spring. It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun has been beating down for a few hours. You take off your jacket. It feels like a beautiful spring day. You dip your hand in the surface of the water, and it actually feels a little bit warm. This is the exact moment when most fishermen abandon their deep water plan and rush straight to the shallow banks. They think the water has finally warmed up enough. But this is a trap. The sun has only warmed the top few inches of the water column. If you go down just 3 feet, the water is still bone-chillingly cold. This is called thermal stratification. The surface feels like spring, but the bottom still feels like winter. The fish are not going to move out of their comfortable, stable, deep water zones just because the surface got a little sunny for 3 hours. They know that as soon as the sun goes down, that shallow water is going to turn freezing cold again. Do not let a warm afternoon breeze trick you into changing your whole strategy. Stick to the transition zones. Keep your bait near the bottom, where the temperatures are stable and the fish feel secure. Let us talk about downsizing your bait. When people think of spring, they think of big meals. They think the fish are waking up from winter and want to eat a massive bluegill or a giant crawfish to pack on weight. So they tie on the biggest, bulkiest jigs and swim baits they own. This is another classic piece of advice that totally fails in early March. Yes, the fish want to eat, but their digestive systems are moving incredibly slowly because of the cold water. A fish might only need to eat one small meal every 3 days right now. If you drop a massive, heavy bait in front of them, it is intimidating. It looks like too much work to catch and too much work to digest. You need to think small. Think about a tiny, shivering baitfish. Think about a small finesse worm on a light, shaky head, or a compact little hair jig. You want your lure to look like an effortless snack. Something they can just open their mouth and flare their gills to eat without having to chase it down or fight it. By cutting the size of your lure in half, you will easily double the amount of bites you get during these tough first 2 weeks. Less is definitely more right now. The speed of your retrieve is the next thing we need to completely overhaul. I cannot say this enough. You are fishing too fast. Even when you think you are fishing slowly, you are probably still fishing too fast. The concept of dead sticking is something most anglers hate because it is boring. But in early March, boredom is your best friend. Imagine casting a small jig out to a rocky point in 15 feet of water. You let it sink all the way to the bottom, and then you do nothing. You just let it sit there for 10 full seconds. Then you slowly drag it 2 feet, and you let it sit again. It takes an incredible amount of mental discipline to fish this way. Your brain is telling you to reel it in and make another cast. But down in the dark, cold water, a fish is staring at your jig. It is slowly swimming up to it. It is inspecting it. If you jerk that rod tip and hop the bait away, the fish will simply turn around and swim off. But if you leave it sitting there, looking perfectly helpless, that fish will eventually suck it in. Slow down your hands, slow down your mind. The longer your bait stays in the strike zone, the better your chances are. I want to share a story about a guy I saw on the lake last year during the first week of March. We were both fishing a long rocky point. He was positioned up shallow, throwing a loud, bright red crankbait. He was casting, cranking frantically, and casting again. He looked like he was in a race. I was positioned out in deeper water, dragging a small rubber-skirted jig along the bottom. It was painfully slow. Over the course of 2 hours, he did not get a single bite. He finally trolled over to me and complained that the lake was fished out, and the weather was terrible. Meanwhile, I had 3 beautiful fat fish sitting in the live well. The difference was not magic. It was simply adapting to the reality of the day. He was trying to force a spring bite that had not developed yet. I was accepting the winter reality that was still present. It is so easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new season and try to force your favorite techniques on the fish. But the fish dictate the rules, not us. If you refuse to adapt your speed and your lure selection to the actual water temperature, you are going to spend a lot of time complaining to other boats just like that guy did. Let us discuss the type of bottom composition you should be looking for. Mud, sand, gravel, and chunk rock all hold heat differently. In the classic spring playbook, guys love to fish muddy flats because they think the dark mud absorbs the sun and warms the water faster. While this is true in late April, it does not help you much in early March. The mud transfers heat quickly, but it also loses it quickly at night. What you actually want to find are big, solid rocks, chunk rock banks, riprap walls, or massive boulders underwater. Rock acts like a thermal battery. It takes a little longer to heat up, but once it absorbs that solar energy, it holds onto it for a very long time, even after the sun goes down. Fish will gravitate toward these rocky areas because the water surrounding the rocks will be 1 or 2 degrees warmer than the rest of the lake. In freezing water, a 2-degree difference is massive. It is like finding a space heater in a freezing garage. Stop looking for shallow mud flats. Start looking for deep rocks and steep rocky channel swings. That is where the entire food chain will be clustered for warmth. Wind direction is another massive factor that everyone ignores right now. We always hear the saying that the wind is your friend because it breaks up the surface and pushes bait fish. But in early March, the wind can be your absolute worst enemy if it is blowing from the wrong direction. A strong wind coming from the north is pushing freezing cold air directly into the water. It will drop the surface temperature and push the fish even deeper into a state of shock. If you have a stiff north wind, you need to hide from it. Find the steep bluffs or deep pockets that are protected from that freezing blow. On the other hand, a soft breeze coming from the south is a totally different story. That southern wind is carrying warmer air. If that warm southern breeze blows onto a rocky bank for 2 or 3 days in a row, that specific area will become the most active spot on the entire lake. Paying attention to the wind direction over a 3-day period is far more important than just looking at the weather on the morning you go fishing. The trend of the weather is what moves the fish, not just the current hour. Spring rains bring another huge problem that ruins early March trips: muddy water. A warm spring rain sounds great, but it often washes tons of cold mud into the backs of the creeks. The classic advice says to fish the dirty water because fish feel hidden and will feed aggressively. This is true in 70-degree water, but muddy water that is 45 degrees is the absolute worst condition you can possibly face. It is cold, and they cannot see a thing. Their metabolism is slow, and now their vision is gone. When they are cold, they rely heavily on sight to find a slow-moving meal right in front of their face. If a muddy cold front rolls through, you have to pack up and move closer to the main lake, where the water is clearer. You need water with at least 2 or 3 feet of visibility right now. It allows the fish to see your slow-moving finesse bait from a distance. Do not let the old myth of fishing the muddy spring runoff ruin your day. If the water looks like chocolate milk and feels like ice, do not even bother making a cast. Start the big motor and find cleaner water immediately. Let us talk about the psychology of the angler right now. This is perhaps the hardest thing to overcome. We are impatient. We have spent 4 months staring at the walls of our house. We want action. We want to feel a massive thump on the end of the line. So we fish fast, we move fast, and we give up on spots too quickly. Early March fishing is a mental game of endurance. You have to accept that you are not going to catch 30 fish today. You are out there to catch 3 or 4 really good ones. The females are at their absolute heaviest right now, full of eggs, waiting to spawn. The reward is a giant fish, but the cost is extreme patience. You have to cast out, let the bait sink, and talk yourself out of reeling it in. You have to tell yourself to wait. It goes against every instinct you have as an excited fisherman. The guys who catch the giants in early March are not the guys with the flashiest boats or the fastest reels. They are the guys with the mental fortitude to drag a little jig through 15 feet of water for 6 hours straight without losing their focus. You have to conquer your own impatience first. Bite detection during these 2 weeks is radically different from the rest of the year. When you throw a topwater frog in May, the bite is violent. You see it, you hear it, and it nearly rips the rod out of your hands. But in early March, the bite is incredibly subtle. The fish are not attacking your bait to kill it. They are simply opening their mouths and inhaling it. You will rarely feel a hard tap. Instead, your line will just feel a little bit heavy. It will feel like you slowly dragged your bait into a pile of wet leaves, or like your lure turned into a sponge. If you are waiting for a hard strike to set the hook, you are going to miss every single fish. You have to become a line watcher. Watch the spot where your line enters the water. If it slowly swims to the left, set the hook. If the rod tip simply feels mushy, set the hook. Hook sets are free. If you are ever in doubt, swing hard. Most guys get bites in early March and never even know it because they are expecting a violent spring smash instead of a quiet, subtle winter slurp. Pay attention to the mushy feeling. Time of day is another classic rule you need to break. We all love the dawn patrol. Getting out on the water before the sun comes up is a sacred fishing tradition. During the summer, it is essential because the fish feed in the low light of morning. But in early March, getting on the water at 6 in the morning is largely a waste of your sleeping hours. The water is at its absolute coldest point right before sunrise. The fish are locked down tight. Unless you are fishing deep winter holes, the morning bite is usually non-existent. The best time to be on the water right now is from 11 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. You want to give the sun a few hours to penetrate the water and slightly warm those rocky transition zones. That tiny bump in temperature in the middle of the afternoon is often the only trigger that makes these fish feed all day. Sleep in. Eat a good breakfast. Let the eager guys go freeze their hands off at dawn for no reason. Arrive at the lake mid-morning and focus all your energy on that afternoon warming trend. That is when the magic actually happens. You must also reconsider your fishing line right now. In the thick weeds of summer, you can get away with using heavy 60-pound braided line. The water is warm, the fish are aggressive, and they do not care about seeing the line. In the cold, clear water of early March, using heavy, visible line is a massive mistake. The fish have plenty of time to inspect your bait because you are moving it so slowly. If they see a thick white rope attached to your little jig, they are going to swim away. You need to switch to clear fluorocarbon. It is virtually invisible underwater, and it sinks, which helps keep your lightweight baits near the bottom. More importantly, fluorocarbon is incredibly sensitive. Since we already talked about how subtle the bites are right now, you need a line that transmits every single pebble and every single mushy bite straight to your hands. Drop your line size down to 8 or 10-pound test. Yes, it feels risky, but you need that finesse presentation to trick these cautious, sluggish fish. Light line and a sensitive rod are your best weapons against cold water lethargy. Let us put together a mental map of exactly how you should approach a creek arm right now. Do not go to the very back where the water is shallow and flat. Do not stay out in the middle of the main lake where the water is 60 feet deep. Go right to the middle of the creek arm. Look for the last deep channel swing before the creek flattens out. Find a spot where the bottom drops quickly from 10 feet down to 20 feet. Look for some chunk rock on that ledge. Position your boat over the deep water and cast up into the shallower section. Slowly drag your finesse bait right off that ledge, down the rocky slope. That is the highway. That is the exact path the fish are taking, as they slowly migrate from winter to spring. If you can intercept them on those structural highways, you do not need to cover miles of water. You can sit on one good rocky drop-off for 4 hours and catch fish all afternoon as they slowly move up the break line. Stop running and gunning. Start dissecting the structure. As we move closer to the middle of the month, things will slowly start to change. That is why this specific 2-week window is so tricky. Every single day, the days get slightly longer and the sun gets slightly higher. Eventually, the water temperature will cross that magical 50-degree mark and stay there. When that happens, the true spring bite begins. The fish will finally rush the shallow banks, the spinnerbaits will start working, and all that classic advice will become totally accurate again. But until that switch flips, you have to hold the line. You have to resist the urge to jump the gun. Fishing in early March is all about discipline. It is about understanding that the calendar is a liar. The trees might be getting green leaves and the birds might be singing, but underwater, winter is fighting its final battle. If you respect the cold water and adjust your tactics to match the reality of the lake, you will be the only guy at the boat ramp smiling at the end of the day. So, let us recap the real truth about these first 2 weeks. The common advice tells you to go shallow, fish fast, and use big baits. The reality tells you to stay in the deeper transition zones, fish painfully slow, and downsize your tackle. It tells you to sleep in, avoid the muddy water, and pay extreme attention to subtle, mushy bites. If you can make this mental shift, you will completely transform your early season success. You are no longer hoping for a random lucky strike from a lost fish. You are systematically targeting the largest fish in the lake exactly where they live, while they are at their heaviest weight of the entire year. It takes patience, it takes focus, and it takes the willingness to ignore everyone else who is doing it wrong. The next time you hit the lake in early March, leave the fast-moving gear in the truck. Grab your finesse rod, find some deep rocks, and slow down. The results will absolutely shock you. And there you have it. The biggest takeaway here is simple but incredibly profound. Stop letting the calendar dictate how you fish, and start listening to what the water temperature is actually telling you. The most unexpected turning point for most anglers is realizing that doing the exact opposite of traditional spring advice is the real secret to catching fish right now. By slowing down, downsizing, and backing off the shallow banks, you instantly put yourself in the top 10% of fishermen on the lake. You are no longer wasting your time casting at empty, muddy banks. You are hunting giant, pre-spawn fish exactly where they stage. This shift in mindset changes everything. Thank you so much for watching. If this video helped you understand the early March transition better, please hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and share it with a fishing buddy who always fishes too fast. Now, I want to hear from you. What is the most ridiculous piece of fishing advice someone has ever given you that totally failed on the water? Drop your stories in the comments below, and I will see you on the next one.